Why do some people feel more alive when they are home alone, while the world calls them lazy or antisocial? Why does society celebrate noise, rush, and constant exposure, yet mistrust silence? And what if staying at home wasn't a weakness, but a sign of a brain that functions differently? Science has discovered that behind this behavior lie deep mental patterns, hidden advantages, and also risks that few dare to mention. Stay because understanding this can change the way you judge yourself. The modern world is built for those who seek constant stimulation, non-stop conversation, open spaces, noise, movement, and social exposure. However, not all brains function well in that environment. People who prefer staying at home don't do it because they reject the world, but because their minds process reality in a different way. Various research in neuroscience indicates that these individuals show greater activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for deep thinking, planning, and self-reflection. This means that even in silence, their minds are rarely at rest. They analyze, connect ideas, and reflect intensely without the need for external stimuli. While more extroverted people need constant interaction to feel active, those who enjoy being at home generate their own internal stimulation. For them, excessive noise and social contact don't provide energy, but rather saturation. Silence is not empty, it is mental space. The problem arises when this difference is judged as a defect. Growing up in a society that rewards visibility and sociability causes many to internalize the idea that something is wrong with them, when in reality, their brain simply follows a different, slower, deeper, and more conscious rhythm. For those who prefer staying at home, the outside world isn't just intense, it's exhausting. It's not about obvious physical tiredness, but a deep mental fatigue that accumulates with every stimulus. Long conversations, crowded places, constant noise, and social expectations continuously activate their nervous system until it's saturated. While some people feel stimulated by that environment, these sensitive minds pay a different price. Each interaction requires more processing, more attention, and more emotional energy. The result isn't enthusiasm, but exhaustion. From the outside, this burnout is often interpreted as a lack of motivation or disinterest, when in reality, it is a natural response to overstimulation. Staying at home then becomes a form of self-regulation. By reducing the number of stimuli, the brain can lower its alertness level and regain balance. Calm isn't a luxury, it's a physiological necessity. In that silent space, the mind reorganizes thoughts, emotions, and memories without external pressure. Over time, many of these people learn to protect themselves almost automatically. They cancel plans, avoid crowds, and prioritize quiet environments. Not because they hate human contact, but because their well-being depends on maintaining that delicate balance between the outside world and their own mental stability. Not everyone who loves staying at home does so for the same reason. In many cases, behind that behavior is a history of emotional burnout. They are the so-called wounded warriors, people who have been through toxic work environments, draining relationships, or prolonged periods of constant pressure. For them, retreating isn't a rejection of the world, but a need for recovery. Home is transformed into a healing space. There they can let their guard down, process what they've been through, and rebuild their mental energy without external threats or demands. Psychological studies show that chosen solitude, when it has a purpose, can accelerate emotional recovery and restore clarity to the mind. But there is another distinct profile: the true introvert. These people don't retreat because of wounds, but by nature. Their nervous system is designed to function with fewer external stimuli. They aren't shy or socially anxious. They simply don't need constant interaction to feel complete. Their mind turns inward, using memory, reflection, and deep observation. Both profiles are often misinterpreted in the same way. From the outside, they look distant or closed off. From the inside, they are just doing what's necessary to stay in balance. Understanding this difference is key to stop mistaking protection for weakness. Many of the most creative minds in history shared a common need: silence. People who preferred to work alone, think without interruptions, and withdraw from social noise to create. Not because they despised others, but because deep creativity is born when the mind has room to wander and connect ideas without external pressure. Science explains this phenomenon through the so-called default mode network, a brain network that activates when we are not focused on immediate stimuli. It is in those moments of calm, when the mind seems to be on pause, that the most complex ideas, unexpected solutions, and creative insights emerge. For those who love staying at home, this mental state is natural and frequent. Far from being unproductive, many of them use solitude as a tool for internal construction. They think long-term, develop concepts, and shape projects that couldn't emerge in the midst of constant noise. Home thus becomes a mental laboratory, a place where creativity doesn't compete with distraction. However, this type of silent creativity is rarely recognized in a culture that values immediate visibility. What isn't shown seems not to exist. And yet, much of human progress was born precisely in those spaces of retreat and deep concentration. There is a group of people who not only think differently, but also feel the world with greater intensity. They are more sensitive to light, noise, smells, others' emotions, and environmental changes. For them, what others consider normal can be overwhelming. This sensitivity is not a weakness, but a real neurological characteristic. Psychology identifies this profile as highly sensitive people. Their nervous system processes information more deeply, allowing them to detect nuances, risks, and details that go unnoticed by most. Throughout human history, this ability had a key evolutionary value: anticipating danger, reading the environment, and reacting with precision. However, in the modern world, this same sensitivity can become a constant source of overload. Noisy spaces, packed schedules, and permanent social exposure force their minds into a continuous state of alert. Staying home then becomes a form of self-protection. In the calm, their nervous system can relax and regain stability. The problem arises when this need is judged as fragility. In reality, many of these people possess deep perception, natural empathy, and a capacity for emotional understanding far above average. Learning to respect their sensitivity isn't about isolating oneself from the world, but about interacting with it from a more conscious and balanced place. Staying at home can be a powerful form of protection and balance, but there is also a limit that isn't always easy to recognize. When withdrawing stops being a conscious choice and becomes constant avoidance, solitude begins to change its nature. It's no longer rest, it's confinement. It's no longer recovery, it's disconnection. This process is usually silent. It begins with the legitimate need for calm and ends, little by little, in the fear of returning to the world. The mind gets used to the safety of isolation and perceives any external stimulus as a threat. Opportunities for connection, growth, or experience are avoided, not because of a lack of interest, but because of a fear of emotional exhaustion. That's why experts insist that the key is not in choosing between being alone or being with others, but in regulating the balance between both states. The home must be a refuge, not a prison, a place to recharge energy, to then return to interacting with the world from a stronger and more conscious position. Understanding this completely changes the narrative. People who love staying at home are not antisocial or broken. They are individuals with a different internal rhythm, who need silence to think, space to feel, and time to process. When they learn to respect that nature without falling into isolation, they discover a more authentic and sustainable way of life. In the end, it's not about adapting to a world that doesn't always understand silence, but about learning to live without betraying oneself. Listening to one's own rhythm, recognizing boundaries, and choosing when to withdraw and when to move forward is one of the deepest forms of emotional intelligence.